Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan. Welcome to this video, guys. My name is Liaquat Zaman. This is my YouTube channel, Roots of Knowledge. Hope you guys are enjoying this. If you guys are first timers here, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and let's watch this. Right. So, وَإِذَا قَبَضَ الْمُشْتَرِي الْمَبِيعَ. So we've done all these words really. قَبَضَ means to take possession of. Mabi' means the goods. Fasid means defective. Amar means with the consent, Amr al-Bay, consent of the seller, with the permission of the seller. Fil aqdi is a contract. Iwadani is times 2. We did the iwad last time. It means exchangeable item. Kullu wahid minhuma mal. Mal means wealth. Malaka yamliku, to possess. And then you got lazimatu, is to become necessary. Qima, it means the market value. Muta'aqidaini, the two people who are contracting. Right, so this is the two contractors. Fasakha yafsukhu, it means that which has been nullified. Void, to be made void. Let me just put some of these words. Okay, void. فَإِن بَاعَهُ الْمُشْتَرِي بَاعَ يَبِيعُ, it means to sell. نَفَذَ, so it means to become implemented, applied, to apply. وَمَنْ جَمَعَ بَيْنَ حُرٍ, حُر is a free person, abd is a slave, shat is a goat, dhakiya means slaughtered, and mayta means unslaughtered, okay, non-slaughtered. بطل البيع فيهما. من جمع means to combine, right, this word has come before. عبد مدبر has come before as well, a slave that has been conditioned. صح العقد, صح means to be valid, عقد is a contract. حصة, it means portion, okay, so portion. ومن ثمن, من الثمن, from the value. ونهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم, نهى means prohibit, the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم has prohibited, okay, so prohibit. عن نجش, okay, so najash is a type of what we call hiking the prices, right, so hiking. And so means negotiation or to bargain. Som غير. وان تلقي means to meet. Jalab means to acquire. And hadir is a resident, someone who lives in a city is called a hadir. Abadi is someone who's from outside the city, outsider, from the Badu. And Bay'i and Adhan is the call. Juma is Friday. Yukrahu wala yafsudu al-aqdu. Man malakat means to own. Mamlukaini means times two slaves. Mamluk is something that is owned. صغيرين, minor, small. أحدهما ذو رحم محرم, okay, ذو means the possessor, and rahim means womb, and mahram means someone who can't marry, someone who you can't marry. من الآخر لم يفرق, فرق يفرق means to be separated. بينهم كذلك كان أحدهما كبير, adult, كبير means adult. آخر, other, صغير, minor, so minor and adult. فإن فرق بينهما كره جاز, لا بأس, nothing's wrong with تفريق, separation. Okay, those words are quite straightforward there. Let's have a look at now the tarkeeb of this. Right, so وإذا قبض, so قبض المشتري المبيع مفعول به. في البيع الفاسد موصوفا صفة بأمر البائع مضاف إليه. في العقد جار مجرور. عوضان, this is going to be the مبتدأ مؤخر. كل واحد, this is going to be the new sentence, that's مبتدأ. منهما مال, okay, خبر. ملك المبيع مفعول به. ولزمته فعل, and قيمته is the فاعل. ولكل واحد مضاف إليه من المتعاقدين فسخه مبتدأ مؤخر. فإن باءه المشتري نفذ بيعه فعل فاعل. ومن جمع بين حر وعبد أو شاة بين شاة ذكية موصوف صفة وميتة بطل البيع فعل فاعل. ومن جمع بين عبد ومدبر أو عبده وعبد غيره مضاف إليه صح العقد عقد بصحيح في العبد بحصته من الثمن. ونهى رسول الله عن النجش وعن الصوم على صوم غيره وعن تلقي شد إذن قاف تلقي الجلب مضاف إليه. وعن بيع الحاضر للبادي وعن البيع عند أذان الجمعة وكل ذلك يكره يكره ولا يفسد به العقد. ومن ملك مملوكين صغيرين أحدهما ذو رحم ذو this is the مضاف رحم محرم this is محرم من الآخر لم يفرق مجهول بينهما كذلك إن كان أحدهما كبيرا والآخر صغيرا. فإن فرق أو فرق I mean if you're going to say لم يفرق, let's make it لم يفرق. Okay, make it معروف. So يفرق فرق بينهما كره له ذلك وجاز البيع وإن كان كبيرين. كان في الناقص كبيرين is the خبر فلا بأس بالتفريق بينهما. Okay, so let's have a go at this now. So what is it saying over here? Let's try to explain this as best as we can. So first of all, let's say for example like, let's zoom this in so we can draw nicely over here. Okay, so let's say for instance there is a buyer and there is this is the guy is a buyer and this guy is the seller. And the buyer and the seller, so let's say for example the seller is selling, I don't know, a laptop. And remember last time we talked about the conditions, right? So when you're selling something and you apply some sort of extra conditions, and this guy's going to give him money, but the seller stipulates a condition. What's the condition that he stipulates? So let's say he says, I will only sell this to you if I can use on Saturdays. Yeah, so again, this is not fair. This is going to render the contract into, it will go through, but it will be considered to be Fasid, F for Fasid. So what's the thing about this contract? So you have three types of contracts. You have a Sahih contract. Okay, so a Sahih, you have a Fasid, and you have a Batil contract. Right, so you have a Sahih, Fasid, and Batil. So what are the rules? The rules basically are, when it comes to, does it go through? So the Sahih goes through, yes. Does it go through? So Sahih goes through, Batil absolute does not go through. A Fasid is pending possession. Yeah. Once it's possessed, then it goes through. Otherwise, it's not. Otherwise, the Sahih one goes through even if the possession hasn't taken place. Okay, so that's the main kind of difference between these three. That's why he says over here, if you look, إذا قبض المشتري, when the mushtari, the buyer, takes possession, right? So he takes possession of the mabi. Fil bay al-fasid, in a fasid contract. Bi amr al-bayi'i, and this has to be with the consent of the seller. The seller has said, yes, you can take it. But if he was to take it off him without his consent, then it doesn't go through. Wa fil aqdi iwadan, and in the contract there's two iwads. So one is here, the cash. One is here, the laptop. Iwadan. Kullu wahid minhuma mal. Each one of them is counted as being mal, meaning Sharia recognizes it as mal. So a laptop is considered to be mal, and the money is mal. Malaka al-mabi'a, the buyer becomes the owner of the product. وَلَزِمَتْهُ قِيمَتُهُ. Okay, so this is the other difference now. Okay, so the qima is going to be necessary. So this is, let me write this down over here. So over here, he has to give the agreed upon price. Over here, in batil, nothing. In a fasid one, it has to be the qima, meaning the market value. So let's say they've agreed upon the price, which is, let's say, £500. But the market value of the laptop, market value, call it MV, the market value is £450. He will legally only have to give £450. This is in a fasid contract. Okay, so let's put over here, how much does he owe? Yeah, so here's the price, here's the market value, here's nothing. So that's what he's saying over here. He's saying that lazimathu qima, he has to give the qima. Okay, so the market value. وَلِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ, and this is the next difference, مِنَ الْمُتَعَاقِدَيْنِ, and each of the two contractors has the right to nullify the contract. فَسْخُهُ, right? So each one has the right to void the contract. The contract can be void. Now, in a sahih contract, so let's say, for instance, let's say, in a normal sahih contract, you can't void the contract. Once the contract has been done, yeah, can you back out? To back out. Obviously, in the batil one, it doesn't even happen, so nothing happens over there. But in the fasid one, you have the yes, you can. It can be nullified. Okay, so it can be nullified. So this is the difference between the three contracts. In a fasid, in a sahih contract, it goes through. And in a fasid contract, does not go. It's pending, and a batil contract does not go through. When it comes to owing the money, in a sahih contract, you have to owe the price. In the fasid one, the market value, and batil, nothing. And as for, can you back out? In the sahih contract, no, you can't. In a fasid contract, yes, you can, and a batil doesn't even happen. Yeah, so that's the difference between all of these three. Once you've understood how the basic concept of the contract works, everything else seems to just fit in place. Okay, so now if, for example, like this buyer was now to go and sell it to someone else, so he's gone and sold it to, let's call him Jack. He's gone and sold this laptop off to Jack, right? So it's been sold, so the trade now goes through, and now it can't be void now. So once he sold it to someone else, it becomes solid. Let's just say sold and solid. It solidifies the contract. So he says, فَإِنْ بَاءَهُ, if the buyer was to go and further sell it off to someone else, نَفَذَ بَيْءُهُ, his bait would be applied. Legally, it would go through. Now, in a batil contract, that doesn't happen. Only in a fasid contract can that happen. Right, so that's the first masala over here. Let's now move on to the next masala. Alright, so let's do this one over here. This masala is to do with combining between something that's permissible and something that is not permissible. Okay, so let's say, for example, like there is a person who is the buyer, this time is him, seller, this is the seller, and the seller has a slave, two slaves. Okay, can he sell two slaves in one contract? So, for example, like this is slave 1, call him 1, slave 2. he wants to sell 2 slaves in one contract to the buyer for, let's say, the price of £1,000. Is that permissible? Yes. Okay, that goes through, totally fine. So basically, in one contract, you are going to have 2 slaves. So this is what we call a one contract. Okay, one contract. And if you sell it in 2 contracts, how would you sell it in 2 contracts? 2 contracts would be, each one will be sold independently. Yeah. So for instance, like let's say slave 1 is sold for £400. Slave 2 is sold for, let's say, £200. This is made up figures. That's 2 contracts there. Contract number 1, contract number 2. That's totally permissible as well. So if you sell 2 permissible things together in one contract, it's jaiz. And if you sell 2 things separately, then that's also considered to be jaiz as well, so permissible. However, if you were to sell one thing, so let's say, for example, like, let's just put a line there. So let's say this guy is selling a slave and a free person. He's kidnapped someone. So this is slave and this is a free man. He can't even be sold. So if he's combining in one contract to sell both of these together, he's saying, I'm selling you a package, yeah, a deal in one. And he's saying, how much are you selling it for? And he says, I'm selling it for £1,000 for the 2, take them. Right, so £1,000 for the 2. Will this deal go through? No, it will not go through. This is not permissible. Why? Because you are not allowed to combine in one contract. In one contract, you can't combine 2 such things that one does not qualify for selling at all. It doesn't qualify for selling. It's not a sellable item. Let's call this a non-sellable item. Okay, just like pork, if you were to sell, I mean, nowadays, let's say someone says to you, a shop has an offer. We're going to sell you a laptop with a pig. It all comes together for the price of £500. Then that contract won't go through. Even for the laptop, it won't go through. Yeah. So if one of the 2 items is haram, is not sellable, then the deal does not go through at all. That's basically what he's trying to say over here. Yeah. So he says, Man jama'a, whoever combines bayna hurrin, between a free person, like over here, wa abdin, right, and between a slave, okay, the deal does not go through. Likewise, he says, O shatin, or a slaughtered goat and a dead non-slaughtered goat. So imagine it the same way. A slaughtered goat is halal, is permissible to sell, and a non-slaughtered goat is like selling a free person. So if you sell them together in one contract, it will not go through. Yeah, it's not going to go through. It's not bad at all. Okay, does that make sense? Now, all of this is if it is in one contract. If it was in 2 contracts, then obviously the contract with the slave would go through and the contract with the free person would not go through. Right? So that's the idea. So he says, when a person combines between a free person and between a slave, or between a slaughtered goat and a carrion, meaning a non-slaughtered goat, batala al-bay'u fihima. The bay would become void in both of them. Right? So the bay would be considered to be void. Okay. So remember, batil means does not go through at all. Now, what if, however, you combine between 2 things, but those 2 things are considered to be sellable items? What does that mean then? So, for instance, like let's draw a line over here, and let's all right. So, for instance, let's say someone wants to sell a slave with a mudabbar. Okay, so mudabbar, remember, it's a slave where you made a deal with it that it's going to go free. So they are technically, you can't sell them, but in a way they are sellable. So they're not like a free person. You can almost say they are semi-sellable, right? So they're like, let's say, semi-sellable. It's not the official word they use for it, by the way. Don't start saying semi-sellable. It's actually mahallul bay. So if you were to sell this in one contract, okay, one contract, to the buyer, then the contract would partially go through. So here, it would go through in regards to the slave. The slave part would go through. Yeah. And however, the other part, right, that would not go through. Right, so this part, actually I should have done a different color, shouldn't I? That does not go through. Yeah, because that's obviously not sellable, it's only semi-sellable. So it cannot go through. Yeah, that's the idea of this. So man jama', whoever combines between a slave and a mudabbar, right? Slave mudabbar, or between his own slave and the slave of someone else. So let's say next door neighbor's slave. He hasn't told the next door neighbor. He's gone and sold his own slave with a next door neighbor's slave for money. Again, it would only go through on his half. It would only go through, and the other half would not go through. Right. So his slave, his part would go through, but the other part would not go through. Okay. صح العقد. The contract will be valid في العبد بحصته من الثمن. The contract will be valid with regards to the slave, meaning the slave part. So let's say, for instance, how would that work then? So if the deal was, let's say, I don't know, £1,000, and in the markets we found out that the slave, the valid slave is like worth, let's say, £600, and the mudabbar, its value is, let's say, I don't know, something else, £400 something, right? It doesn't matter how much it is. He would only have to pay. This guy would only have to pay 600. Because he's only going to get that one there. Right, that's done now. Let's move on to the next mas'ala. We are almost near the end. Mashallah. Let me know what you guys think of these lessons. If you guys enjoy these lessons, please hit a like button, subscribe button, because it really helps my videos as well. And if you guys want to become patrons as well, if you want to support my channel, or you know someone that wants to support my channel, because it's all sadaqah jariyah, it's all for a good cause, then please consider becoming a patron, support the channel, hit the like button, and share it with us. Details are in the description below. So now these are some of the things the Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited. Okay, so let me just, these are like some explicit prohibitions. Although the other ones are prohibited as well, but these are of a different nature of prohibited. These types of prohibited ones go through, but they're wrong to do that. Like you can say they're morally wrong, right? So ethically, morally wrong. Let's put morally wrong. You can say. So number one is price hiking. What's price hiking? Price hiking is in Arabic called najash. So what happens is, let's say for example you're selling something, and you're selling an auction. So you're saying to people, I'm selling my laptop for £500. Anyone wants to buy? Come on, who wants to buy? One guy goes, yeah, I'll buy it for £501. Yeah. Now no one else is raising the price. So what you do is you tell this other guy that whenever no one's buying it, you come in and you falsely claim that you want to buy it. So he goes, I'll buy it for £700. Oh, mashallah. This guy is the prohibited guy. This guy is the bad guy. He's the price hiker. So price hiking is not allowed. So the Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited. Yeah, he prohibited Naha Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and in najashi, he prohibited the practice of najash. Okay, no, you don't do the practice of najash. Unfair this is, because this is cheating people. Clearly they don't know that behind the scenes you're manipulating the prices. So this is not allowed. Number two, the second one the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prohibited is the prohibition of is making a bargain after a bargain has been made, after a bargain has been reached. So what does that mean? Let's say there's two guys are selling something, and they've kind of like almost agreed on selling it. So this guy, he's happy, and this guy, he's happy as well. And then another guy comes in, and this other guy says to this guy, listen, right? He goes, listen, forget him, I'll buy it off you for a higher price. Yeah, so this, although the deal is not done between these two, although it's not considered ijab and qabul, it's still pending, right? But because some sort of promise, they've reached some sort of promise, then a third person cannot butt in and cannot make an offer, right? He cannot make an offer after that. So this is not allowed unless it's an explicitly auction. In an auction you can, yeah, as long as it's carrying on, then it's fine. But once two people have come to some sort of agreement, then for a third person to step in and to make this guy is the guy in the wrong. Yeah, so this is called Sawm نهى عن الصوم على صوم غيره. So صوم means bargain, negotiation, over the negotiation of someone else. So this guy is the negotiating over the negotiation of someone else. Yeah. Okay, next. Number 3. The Prophet ﷺ, he prohibited from talaqqi al-jalab. Okay, this is called meeting. They call this meeting the caravans. Okay, so jalab means to like acquire, attain. So what happens, let's say for example, this is a city. So there's a guy that lives in the city, and what he does is he decides, let me go outside, and the businessmen that are coming from outside, the importers, I'll go and meet them, and I'll buy all their goods off them. Yeah, so this guy over here now, he buys all their goods, and he comes back to the city, and then he sells it, he monopolizes, he sells it whatever rate he wants. So he sets the prices. So if anything is going to harm them, if it's something that's going to harm the people, then the Prophet ﷺ has prohibited this. But if it's not going to harm them, then it's fine. See, if these guys were allowed, if these two individuals were allowed to come into the city and sell their products, they probably might have got better offers. Yeah, they might have got better offers, and the people would have benefited because there's good competition. But what this guy wants to do is he wants to go and he wants to buy all the stuff from outside, and then he's the sole seller of this. So he prohibited talaqqi al-jalab. Yeah, he prohibited the talaqqi al-jalab. So this is also considered to be prohibited. So this is prohibited. This other type, the fourth type. Why have I done number 2 there? Number 3. Okay, let's do number 4 now. So number 4 is basically called bay'ul hadir lil badi. So the resident sells for the person from outside. Okay, so let's say for example, again, it's a city and there's some people from outside. And there's a guy inside who actually is he says, look, I'll sell it for you guys. He doesn't buy it off them. He says, I'll sell it for you guys. Right, so they give him the goods, and he now is become like the middleman. Again, this, if it's not going to harm the people, it's okay. But if it's going to harm the people, like he buys all the rice in this from them. And then when he goes, he's the sole seller of these, like on their behalf. He can set the prices high. And this is considered to be unfair. Okay, so let's just put this over here. So وَعَنْ بَيْءِ الْحَاضِرِ لِلْبَادِي. So the hadi selling for the hadir, selling for the badi. Okay, so the next one now. So the next one, this is عن بيء عند الأذان. So I'll try to get some space over here. Looks like I'm running out of space. I'll try to put it over here. Okay, so what does this mean? So let's say, for instance, it's Friday. Friday is considered to be a very sacred day because we have the Jummah. So let's say Jummah Salat, right? It starts at 1 o'clock. Okay, 1 o'clock is Jummah. And at, let's say, 12:30 is considered to be 12:30 is the adhan. So at 12:30 the adhan is given. So the muadhin calls out Allahu Akbar. Right, so he calls out the adhan Allahu Akbar at 12 o'clock, 12:30. So that means at 12:30 you are not allowed to buy and sell. The Quran says فَاسْعَوْا إِلَى ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. So at 12:30 all the way until the salat starts, you have to stop trading. Buying, trading, you must stop it at once. So any deal that is taking place after 12:30, right, that stops a person from going to Jummah, right, so it stops a person from going to Jummah, that trade is considered to be sinful. The trade will go through, but it's going to be counted as being sinful. Okay, so this is number 5, this is. So let's have a look at this then. وَعَنْ الْبَيْءِ إِنْدَ أَذَانِ الْجُمَعِ. And selling at the time of the adhan of Jummah. So selling at the time of the adhan of Jummah, this is considered to be okay. وَكُلُّ ذَلِكَ يُكْرَهُ. He says all of that is considered to be makruh tahrimi, sinful. However, لَا يَفْسُدُ بِهِ الْعَقْدُ. The contract will not become nullified. Meaning, if you were to do any of these 5 things, then the contract would become not nullified. To go through, but you'll just be considered to be sinful. Right? I mean, obviously not just sinful. Sin is a bad thing anyway. So you'll be sinful. Okay. Now, last masala now. Right, so this is the last masala. Now, this last masala is to do with a specific case. Let's say, for example, there is a guy, buyer, and there is a seller. And this, let's put there a seller, and they call this guy buyer. And the seller has two children who are siblings. Yeah, so let's say one is 5 years old and one is 10 years old. They're both siblings. When he sells them, because they are very young, he's not allowed to sell them separately. He has to sell them together to whoever is selling it to. So he must sell both of the young minors together. He can't sell them separately. And this was a case that happened in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when Ali radiallahu anhu was given two minors, and the Prophet ﷺ, he said, what's happened to them? He said, I've sold one off to someone else. He goes, no, get them back. He goes, you're not allowed to separate them. So over here, you can't separate. You have to sell them both together. Now, the condition is that they both have to be like related to each other in such a way that they can't marry each other. Yeah, so like brother and sister, or brother, or, you know, someone of that nature. So he says, Man malaka, let's do this in different color. Man malaka, whoever possesses two slaves, saghirain, that are minors. So this guy possesses two slaves, this one and this one. أحدهما ذو رحم محرم, one of them is ذو رحم محرم من الآخر, of the other one. Yeah, so ذو رحم محرم means, ذو رحم means from the same womb, and mahram means they can't marry each other. Yeah, and I've explained this word before. So let's say, let me just quickly explain it, just in case you've forgotten. Let's say, for example, there was a grandmother, and this grandmother, she had children, and these children then obviously got married, and then they had their children, okay, and then they had their children. All these are from the same womb. All of these are from the same womb. Okay, so they're from the same womb, they're from the same womb, they're from the same womb. They all come from the same womb, the grandmother. But can they marry each other? So the ones that cannot marry each other are these cannot marry, right? Because they're siblings. These cannot marry, and these cannot marry separate. But if, for example, like this one wanted to marry this one, then it's allowed. So these two are not mahrams for each other, but they are dhu rahims. Yeah, so this one, they are. Okay, so this is why he says dhu rahim come from the same womb, and they are mahram, meaning they can't marry each other. Lam yufarriq, the seller is not permitted to separate between the two. He must sell them together. The same rule, so this is the first scenario, the same rule goes if one of them, for example, was an adult. Yeah, so one of them is an adult, like their uncle or their parent with them, then you can't separate them because it's going to hurt the feelings of the young one. كذلك إن كان أحدهما, likewise if one of them was a kabir, an adult, والآخر صغيرا, and the other one is صغير, so adult and a minor. You can't separate them. If he was to separate between them, then what? فإن فرق بينهما كره له ذلك. That would be considered makruh tahrimi, sinful. وجاز البيع, however, the trade would go through. And that's it. But what if the two are both adults, right? And if both of them were considered to be adults, then it's totally permissible. Yeah, so let's say, for example, it was two brother and sister. One is, let's say, 20 years old and one is 22 years old. Then totally permissible. You can separate them, right? So those are permissible to separate. So وَإِنْ كَانَا كَبِيرَيْنِ, and if both are considered to be adults, لَا بَأْسَ, then there's nothing wrong with tafriq, separation between the two. So prohibition is only if they're both minors, or one of them is a minor, one of them is adult. And there you have it. Lesson is done. I know lesson's a bit long today, but these masail, trust me, they require explanation. They require thorough explanation. I don't like it when students don't understand things. I like to thoroughly explain to the student so that the student can appreciate the masala at a good level. Okay, some questions for you guys now. So first of all, in a Bay Fasid, if the sale goes through, if the deal is done, when does the sale go through? It goes through when the seller has given permission. Yeah. What are the conditions? There's two conditions, that they have to be two iwad, two exchangeable items, and each one of them has to be mal. Okay. But they should nullify it. What if the buyer was to go and sell it to someone else? what would happen? Then the sale becomes solidified, right? Then they can't void it. Okay, if a person was to combine between a slave and a slave, would that deal be okay in one contract? Yes. What if you combine between a slave and a free person? Then that would not be okay. That would be considered batil. You cannot have that at all. None of them go through. What if you combine between a slave and a mudabbar? What would happen over there? So in that case, the slave would go through partially and the mudabbar would not go through. Okay, are you allowed to price hike? No, prohibited. What does that mean? In an auction, when you have someone set up that manipulates the prices. Are you allowed to make a new bargain upon someone else's bargain? No. Are you allowed to go and buy all the goods from outside and then sell it in the city? No, if it's going to harm the people, otherwise you can. Are you allowed to go and be the middleman and buy for the people on the outside, sell for the people on the outside? No, if it's going to harm people. And are you allowed to sell on the Friday after the Jummah prayer, after the Jummah adhan? No. After the salat's finished, then you can. And what about selling two young minor slaves together? Can you sell two young minor slaves together? No. If they are both mahrams of each other, then you can't. And what about adults? Yes, you can. Okay, there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Check out the video again, watch it again, share it with others as well. Thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting my channel. Love you guys a lot. You guys make so much effort for my channel and you support it on a monthly basis. It means a lot to me. If any of you guys want to become supporters of this channel and you want to support the channel on a monthly basis, you can give as small as £1 a month, $1 a month, any amount that you think is going to go towards this channel. I appreciate it so much. And details in the description below. I will see you guys next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.